Hello, in this video I'm going to be showing you how I add a shadow root to my Melanie monotopper. I figured it is the perfect time to learn how to do this since I've been at home with enough time to learn something new. First thing I did was part the hair topper in 4 sections, 2 on the back, 2 on the front, and I'll be working my way from the back to the front. From there I went ahead and prepared the hair dye according to the instructions. And I am using permanent hair dye, but it's optional. You can use semi-permanent in case you're doing it for the first time and you don't want to risk it. That's an option. And here you can see how I sectioned the hair topper and some of the things that I used for this process. Once I'm done with this, I'm also going to be showing you how I add face framing layers to the topper. Okay, I've started already with the process, and what I'm doing is I'm making sure that I'm putting hair dye on the part lines that I created, or the sections. And I'm making sure that I'm putting the hair dye on both sides. And now I'm working my way down the center. And like I said, applying the hair dye on both sides of that part line. One thing that I haven't mentioned is how further down do I want the shadow root to be. I went ahead and did about 1.5 inches, but you can elongate it even more. It's all personal preference. Once I'm done applying the hair dye to these part lines, what I'm going to do is sort of create more sections into this one section that I have, sort of like layers. I'm going to start from my way up to the bottom. You don't want to do the other way from bottom to top because then it's going to be very messy. Now what I'm doing is applying the hair product, and I'm making sure that I put it on the front and on the back. To create these layers, I'm using the tail of this brush, as you can see. And then, like I said, I make sure that the product is on the top and underneath it. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my fingers and smudge that hair dye. By smudging the hair dye, it just gives the final result a more seamless transition, as opposed to just seeing a very harsh line. On top of that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to run a comb through the length of the hair once. What I learned through this process was to not do it twice because it can make your hair look patchy. So you don't want to do that. A little recap, you apply the hair dye on top and underneath that section or that layer that you created. You smudge, and then you run the comb through once. And the purpose of the comb is also to make that root look more blended, more seamless. I'm only going to show you one section from the back. Once you move to the other section, it's totally the same process. But also make sure that when you reach the last layer, that you saturate with hair dye, underneath it very well, or around it. Moving on to the front sections, it's still the same method. You know, you make sure your part lines are saturated, and then you make sure that you're applying product over and under the hair, and also you're smudging and using that comb. The only difference now is, instead of applying the product in a straight line, you want to sort of apply it in a diagonal direction. Also, by doing this, it's going to help us not have that harsh line. It's going to look more natural and more blended towards the back part of the hair. Once you're done with all the sections, just make sure that everything's well distributed, that they look, even, the same. And also check the circumference of the topper, which is the underneath part, and just make sure that everything is well saturated with hair dye. Now, I left the hair dye for 20 minutes only. It was recommended for 30 to 45 minutes, but I didn't want to leave the product for such a long time. I was afraid that it was going to end up looking very dark. So for the first time that I'm doing it, I decided to do it for less time, which was the 20 minutes. And of course, you can wash your topper as usual. I did decide to use shampoo, and also I did use a hair mask just to give it some treatment. But yeah, that's it. And then I'm going to move on to how I did the face framing layers. So I decided to do this shadow root to my topper because the color wasn't matching with my bio hair, but I do love the color that it came with. So I figured, why not do a shadow root? And yeah, that's what I did. And one thing that I do want to say is that the majority of the time, 99% of the time, when you get your new topper, it's probably not going to be a perfect match. You have to work with your toppers. You have to give them a chance. And that's basically what I'm doing. And also by cutting it, by removing clips or moving them around, by giving it a trim, adding some layers. You can do so many things to a topper. And by doing all these things, it just starts becoming your own. And once you make it your own, you will completely fall in love with it. Anyway, so another thing is that this topper is a mono topper, and I don't have much experience with mono toppers. So at first, it was kind of hard to make this topper sit flat. But I did notice that the more I wore it, and also the more I washed it, which I think I've washed it twice already, it has helped it a lot, and it's sitting way flatter than when it was new. So that's a good thing. Okay, moving on to the scary part. I was very nervous doing this. I still think that I need more practice, but overall I am happy with how things came out. And what I did is I tried on the topper, sectioned it on the front, and I tend to use a middle part. And what I did is I grabbed a section from the front and cut it to the length of where I want my first layer to start, which was below my chin. Using that guide that I initially cut is going to help me, like I said, to know where I'm cutting my first layers. And what I do is I grab a section and I do it in a diagonal form, and then what I do is I pull it on the opposite direction. And based on that guide, I'll start cutting. And so each section that you get, it's going to become a new guide, right? So, okay, what I'm going to do now is grab the second section diagonal wise, and then pull it towards the opposite side. And then I'm going to make sure that for each section, you keep the same elevation. That way things look more nicely. And I think that's where I need more practice. So yeah, and you go ahead and cut, and you keep on doing the same thing. And then towards the end, I did connect my last layer towards the length of the back of the hair, and you'll see that later on in this video. And it's the same thing when you do the other side. So just remember to pull on the opposite direction. You keep the same level and that you're paying attention to your guides. From the hair to the front just so that you can see how those layers look, but I will be showing you the final results once I have styled this hair topper. So these are the final results. I am very pleased with how everything turned out. You know, the roots and the layers, I am just very happy. It's not perfect. There is more space for improvement. So on the next time, I know where I'll need to improve. But yeah, and if you want to attempt all of this, make sure that you watch more videos and, you know, keep yourself more informed on different techniques and apply what's more comfortable to you. And I'll show you a close-up of my bio hair transitioning to the topper. It just makes it look more and more natural. But yeah. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video and I'll see you on the next time. Bye.